Okay, for tonight's banked fire episode, what this is generally about, me reminiscing, I'm going to tell you about one of the most interesting and fascinating things I've ever seen in nature, and two of the most special moments that I've had in nature. Now, this very much relates to the tag that Donnie Pavolini gave me many moons ago of when I knew that this was going to be a part of my life. And I don't remember how old I was, but I was in my teens. Of course, I always known that the outdoors is going to be a part of my life because I was born into it. All right, the very first experience I had in the woods that I found the most fascinating, most amusing, and just totally blew me away happened one morning when I was deer hunting on the Big Black River in Mississippi. I was down in this hardwood bottom, and I'd been hunting all morning, and nothing was really moving around. And I started fidgeting and stuff like that, but anyway, I finally calmed myself back down. I was just sitting there, and I got the click, when you like click into nature and you just sit back and let things happen and just, enjoy yourself and the things that happen around you. And I kept hearing this scurrying, kind of like a squirrel, but not like a squirrel. Of course, I thought it was a deer. I was ready to, had the gun up and ready. And this little possum comes by. And I was like, what? Okay, a little possum. But this was a little baby possum. The thing wasn't more than 8 inches long. It was a baby possum. And he jumps up on this log. And this log is probably about 8-10 foot long. And then right after that, here comes this armadillo. And the armadillo had been chasing the possum. And the armadillo was a little baby. And he was just about the same size, just a little baby. I can't do this. Anyway, he was, I swear they were just, about as long as a football, if that long. So the possum jumps up on this log and he's running. And then the armadillo runs alongside the log. And when the possum got to the end of the log, he turned around and went back the other way. And as soon as he did that, the little baby armadillo, he turned around and he went back the other way too. And when the possum got to the end of the log, he turned around and ran back. And the armadillo turned around and went back. And they did this for about 10 minutes, I swear. 10 solid minutes, just sitting there. The possum was on the log, running back and forth. And the armadillo was on the ground, running back and forth. Anyway, I just sat there totally fascinated that these two creatures, totally unalike, were having a relationship. And they were playing. They were actually playing together, just running back and forth. And they'd stop and look at each other, and then run and play. And, this went on. And then finally, possum jumps off the log and just takes off. And they're gone. And then when it was all over, I just sat there. I was just, dumbfounded. And, that memory is always just like stuck in my mind so much. And it's probably the one time that I was the most fascinated by the creatures on this earth. And seeing something like that and seeing that relationship. It's okay. The second time in my life that something happened. This was beautiful. And this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, growing up in Mississippi in the 60s, we didn't see very many deer. You know, Mississippi now has one of the largest deer populations of any state. But in the 60s, it was not like that. And the only time I'd ever seen a deer was in the headlights. Not spotlights, headlights on the side of the road. But we hunted all the time. And back in those days, we always ran dogs. So I'm on top of this hill, and I've been there all morning long, and absolutely nothing had moved. The dogs never even came near me. When I did hear them, they were way off in the distance, going the other way. So I just sat there still hunting. Didn't see a thing. I've been there for probably 2.5 hours, maybe three. You know, time has a way of changing over the years, and especially when you're hunting, you know, just things don't click. But so I'm sitting on this hill, didn't see anything, didn't hear the dogs, and my uncle drives up. He gets out of the truck and he walks over to me. He says, "Have you seen anything?" And I go, no, not at all. And so we just sitting there kind of talking, and it was a really foggy morning. Beautiful mist all over. We're on top of the hill looking at this little pasture land, some brush between the pasture and this big, huge 40-acre field with some brush right in front of it. It was just, you know, high grass is what it was, just real high grass. So we're just sitting here talking, you know, and all of a sudden, this buck, a really, really nice 8-point, about 25 yards in front of us, just jumps up. He'd been there the whole time that I had been hunting, the whole time that we had been talking. He'd been laid up, and he just sprang out of the brush, that high grass, just picture perfect. Just takes this huge leap, and then another one, and then another one, and then he just disappeared. And that was the first time I had ever seen a buck. Been hunting for years and years and never saw a buck. But, you know, the fact that my uncle was there with me, who passed away a couple years ago, and, you know, it was mystical. It really was mystical. I can't explain it. Just the fact, you know, with the scenery was just totally Mississippi. Beautiful pastures, beautiful oak trees, mist all over the place, and here's this beautiful buck just bam, 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 and just disappeared. And then once again, man, I was just thunderstruck and just sat there. And then my uncle didn't say a word either. And then he looked over and he goes, "Did you see that?" And I went, "Yep." And we didn't mention it again. We just turned around, went back, and got in the truck. But that is my happy spot. That's my happy place. That's where I go. If I'm really stressed out, or when I go to bed at night and I just can't relax or something like that, I go to my happy spot. That's it. That's where I go. On top of that hill, and I just vision that buck just leaping off. Okay, the third most special thing, most beautiful thing I've ever seen in nature was 2 years ago. And I had gone back to Mississippi to go to my uncle's funeral. And that was the same uncle that I saw my very first deer with. And that morning I decided not to hunt. And I just took my brew kit, and I was going to go down to Bayou Pierre, right above Port Gibson. And I was just going to go sit on the riverbank and brew me up a nice cup of coffee and just sit down there and relax. So I had taken a golf cart down there, very quiet, pull up to the end of the field, get out, and I hear something. And I look over to my right, and I don't see anything, but I know it's a deer. You hunt long enough, you know it. This was not a squirrel. And everything was just deadly quiet. And then all of a sudden, I just heard him start snorting at me and stomping the ground and blowing. And I just stopped. And all of a sudden, he just took off. And I'm facing the bayou, and he runs right in front across of me. And he was the largest deer I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, he was 250 plus. No doubt about it. He was only an 8-point, but he was huge, big, thick neck. Just when you think deer, he's like a perfect specimen of a white-tailed deer. Runs directly across in front of me. Well, I'm just sitting there, you know, well, I decided not to bring a rifle today. Which, you know, I wouldn't have had a chance to shoot him anyway. He busted out of there so quick, I never got a shot. So, after he leaves, I continue walking down to the bayou. And right when I get to the edge of the bayou, I look over to my left, and he's standing there. And he turns to his right and looks at me, and I'm looking at him to my left. And he just bolted off the bank. And when he did, he landed about halfway down and just slid on his back legs right into the water and just leaped across until he got to the other side of the water there during that time of year, which was, you know, it was late fall. I think it was actually in December or November. I don't exactly remember what month it was. But the water was low, and he just ran across the riverbank, calling the river, bayou, whichever you prefer, gets to the other side, turns back, looks at me, and then just takes off. But what made it so, it was just picture perfect, everything. From, you know, him looking to the right to look at me, him leaping off the bank. You know, National Geographic couldn't have timed something more beautiful. If I could have had that on camera, you know, it was just spectacular. I mean, it was a geographic moment. And I'm telling you, I mean, his hindquarters were as large as a mule. I'm talking about a mule, you know, big old stout mule, big, huge deer. Now, the fact that it was all so beautiful in the way it happened, you know, that was special in itself. But that was the day before my uncle's funeral. And those two moments in my life kind of clicked, you know. First time I'd ever seen a buck, and then this big, beautiful buck showing up in front of me. You know, so, and I was just flabbergasted after that. But those are 3 moments of my life that I treasure, you know, and make me really appreciate the outdoors and the animals and the creatures and just being out here, enjoying it all and being a witness, you know. So, I hope you enjoyed that. That's all I got.